Well, good evening and welcome to Yada Yahweh. It's my pleasure to be with you all. I know we have Kirk with us today. We have James. Lisa, I think, is on her way back to the Dominican Republic, and the question is whether or not we'll have Larry. I'm not sure, but we will proceed. And what we decided to do today is, for those who have listened, we did record an observations program today. We returned to Moody Jeff. And we made progress through what I thought was the most disgusting comment in Moody Jeff's letter. And Kirk and I dealt with many of the aspects of that. We'll return to that a week from today and continue it with observations. But now what I would like to do is do as we had promised on this program a week ago, Friday evening, where we said we would cover the beginning of Yahshua 1, so that, and we move into 2, so that we have in context how Yahweh introduces the concept of Zion. And the reason for that is that Zion isn't a mountain. Zion isn't really a place, although it is co-located at an extremely important place. Zion is one of the most important terms in the Torah and prophets, and the only way to understand what Zion represents is to see how Yahweh presents the concept in the context of his discussions regarding it. So there's no better way to do that than to consider how he uses Zion and Yahshua, Isaiah. And then we'll transition to his discussions regarding Zion and Shamuel and in Chronicles and in Kings, where Yahweh was talking about his relationship with David. It is my conclusion, and we've talked about this before, so I'm not. This is not a spoiler alert. That Zion absolutely unequivocally is not an independent place. That Zion is nothing more or nothing less than what the word itself means. Zion in Hebrew means signpost along the way, signs posted along the way, if you will. So it is a message that God is presenting on the path from our world to living in the covenant with him in 7 dimensions. So the signs that are posted along that way so that we know how to travel from our world to his is what Zion represents. It would be, without Zion, it would be like driving on the interstate without any signs at the exits. Any signs to tell you if you were driving to or away from a particular city. It would be like looking at a map and having no names, no information of any kind printed on that map. There is literally no way to find Yahweh without Zion. Now, you could say, all right, I can read the Torah, and I can find and come to know Yahweh from the Torah, but the Torah isn't a static, isolated document. The Torah was written such that it was grounded in place and time. Yeah, in the context of place and time. And you have to understand the context of the people, the place, and the time to understand the Torah. Outside of the context of people, place, and time, the Torah is not comprehensible. Within the context of people, place, and time, the Torah is the most important message ever afforded humankind. And with those people, in that place, in that time, the Zion represent the signs that direct our attention to the way to God. So, with that stated, what I'd like to do is I want to have Kirk, if you wouldn't mind, read a passage or two from Yahshua, starting at 1:2, and we'll comment briefly along the way. We've been over this material before, so we're not going to go into any great depth in it. But unless we understand the context of Yahweh's discussion, where he brings up Zion not once but twice, then we're kidding ourselves in terms of understanding. It is impossible to understand Yahweh apart from the context of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So why don't you go ahead and begin?
Sure.
Kirk. By the way, is that 949 area code that I'm looking at here, James, is that by chance Larry, or is that just someone else?
No, that's someone else. Just someone listening.
All right. Yeah, we have sometimes a score of people or more that listen on the phone as opposed to listen through the internet interface with the program. If you do want to listen by the phone, by the way, the listen line is 347-326-9553. 347-326-9553. All right, go ahead, Kirk.
All right, so listen, spiritual realm, and choose of your own accord to pay attention and respond, material realm, because Yahweh has spoken. I reared my children, lifting them up, helping them grow, and enabling them to be great. I raised them, taking them to a higher place, but they have actually rebelled against me.
Well, now let's just stop right there for a moment.
Okay,
let's stop for a moment. Let's stop there for a moment. He said, listen, spiritual realm. That's a directive. That's a directive. So those are the malak. I want you to listen to me, malak. As an implement, you're going to be much more effective if you know what I'm thinking, what I want, what I have concluded. Okay? Don't just be out there and be a dumb tool. You're going to be a smart tool if you listen to what I have to say. Was there any volition associated with listen?
Well, yeah, when you choose of your own accord, I mean, I don't.
But that's not directed at the spiritual realm, is it?
No, that's down to the material realm. Yeah.
Okay, so in the material realm, that would be us.
Us? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be us. Choose of your own accord to pay attention and respond. Material realm. That's profoundly different. That is creating this distinction between the spiritual implements, the malak, and the spiritual realm that have no free will.
No, they have
I want you to be informed.
They have no choice.
Right, but I want you to be informed. You're not stupid.
No.
I want you to be informed. You can do what I want you to do more effectively. I mean, being an implement, by the way, I know Christians have this stupid idea that angels are these loving, caring beings. They're not loving. They're not caring. They're implements.
No,
now,
that is not
that is not a knock. I mean, being an implement used by Yahowah, that's a really cool job. I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
That's
what we all strive to be.
Oh, man, to be a messenger, an implement, a malak. Malak means messenger, envoy, representative of Yahowah. And you're a spiritual being, which means you're eternal, powerful. You can maneuver in time. You can enter 7 dimensions. You actually understand dimensions beyond the 3.5 that we exist in. So, but he's not giving them choice.
No.
He just says, listen, I want you to listen. Because you can be a more effective implement if you listen. And then with the material realm, he says it's your option. He wrote that in a volitional mood. So it's our choice to pay attention and respond. He wants us to do so, but we operate under the auspices of free will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those are the first 2 things that should strike us. Because Yahweh has spoken. Well, this is Yahweh's introductory line in Yashayah. If he says, because Yahweh has spoken, that means that he said something before this. What did he say?
I reared my children. He lifted.
No, that's not what he said. No, that's what he says after this.
Oh, okay.
He says, Yahweh has spoken. What did he say previously?
Oh, I don't have 1-1. I'm afraid
How about,
I'm not sure.
1-1 is all 1-1 is Yashayah introducing himself and saying, when I received this first revelation, this is who I'm the son of. This is the context in which I received this, so we can date it to 745 BCE. Yahweh has spoken means that Yahweh's already conveyed his Torah. He's already conveyed his Torah. So we know what Yahweh has said. And in his Torah, he introduces the covenant. So what he is going on to say isn't a new revelation. Yahweh is saying, I have done this. I raised my children. I offered them the opportunity to be great. What he is talking about is what he has already conveyed and offered to do and has done relative to the covenant that he established first with Noah and then with Abraham. That's what he's talking about here. The I reared my children should not be understood out of context. It isn't a new statement. It is an affirmation of the purpose of the Torah. The purpose of the two direct us to the means to understand and accept and to act upon the terms and conditions of the covenant so that we attend the annual meetings with Yahweh and become part of his family. So it's really important to know that his revelation through Yahshua, which is the greatest prophetic revelation in human history, is not isolated. It is an expose on what Yahweh had previously conveyed, previously done,
and what they should have known.
Man's stupid response to it. Okay, so that's the second aspect of that's the third. Spiritual realm needs to listen because they are brilliant implements. Great job. Second is in the material realm, that would be us. We're given free will, and Yahweh's principal admonition for us is for us to pay attention and respond. If we do not pay attention and respond, we have no chance of getting to know him. We have no chance of being in a relationship with him. We have no chance of entering his home. We have no chance of surviving our mortal life. And he says, I have spoken. Now, there is no past tense in Hebrew. Things were true, are true, and will be true. But when he speaks of I reared my children, and you read this in context, there is absolutely no way, it is impossible to view this as anything other than I have done this, and then they did that. Which means that Yahweh is referring to what he had previously done relative to children, and what he previously did relative to children is presented not only in the Torah, but the opening book of the Torah, in his discussions and agreements with Abraham.
Why is that so prevalent, that they rebel? Why do people rebel so much? It staggers me. I'm not even asking for an answer. It happens so often throughout the Torah. This is time after time after time. He says,
I'll speak to that, but let me get to the fourth point here that's interesting.
Okay.
What Yahweh said as the fourth point, I reared my children. I reared my children. Here is Yahweh's opening comment in the single most important prophetic discourse in human history. And his opening comment is, he's asked us to listen of our own accord, pay attention and respond. And his first statement is, I reared my children. Does that make him a fearsome God?
Hardly.
No.
What does that make him?
Makes him a loving father.
That's it. So from God's perspective, the single most important thing he wants us to know about him, and the single most profound prophetic revelation in human history is Yahweh was committed to and acted in a manner that was consistent with rearing children. Father, family. That means, folks, what that does is destroys the notion of the Torah being law. Destroys the notion of God being wanting to be feared.
Well,
it destroys the idea of God wanting to be worshipped. It destroys the idea of God wanting us to pray to him. It presents God exactly the way the Torah, particularly Bereshith, and the presentation with Abraham and the covenant have Yahweh presenting himself to humankind. I want to be dad. I'm offering you the opportunity to be my children and to inherit everything that I have to offer.
Yeah.
When it comes to understanding who Yahweh is, what he's offering and what he expects from us, the single most important thing for us to understand is that God is created the universe, authored life, provided the Torah, engaged in human affairs for a singular purpose. He wants to adopt us into his family. He wants to be our Father. That's it. If you understand that, you no longer have a Jesus Christ. You no longer have a faith-based religion. You no longer have God being all-loving. You no longer have God being omniscient or omnipresent. You no longer have
God-fearing people.
You don't have a Trinity. You don't have a book of laws. You don't have obedience. You don't have a Lord. All of that rubbish disappears the moment you recognize that Yahweh's preeminent statement, his ultimate desire, his commitment, the entire reason that he created humanity. I reared my children. Now, the next part of this is also important. Because it profoundly changes the nature of the relationship between covenant members and God. God, rather than wanting people to get down on their knees, he says, no, I lifted them up.
Yeah.
I helped them grow.
Profound,
I enabled them to be great.
You can't get much more opposite than your knees than being lifted up by God.
Correct.
To raise somebody up. Yeah.
Right. God's not looking for you to be humble. God's not looking for you to be afflicted.
He wants you to be great.
He wants you to be great. You know, God doesn't say, I want you to praise me as if I'm great. No, the goal is the antithesis of that. This worship service, you know, all these goddamn Christian churches with their worship service, that's the antithesis of what he's saying here. He doesn't want to be worshiped. He doesn't want to be lifted up. He doesn't want us to tell him that he's great. What is his goal? To make us great.
To make us
better.
Same like him, yes.
Yeah.
For the family.
I mean,
and
this is the antithesis of religion. It's the opposite of what the religious buffoons would have you believe. Rather than us telling God that he's great, God wants to actually make us great.
That's really profound, isn't it?
Oh, it's stunningly profound. And it's right there in the
Think
Word.
about it. You know, which one's productive? Us attempting to lift God up or God lifting us up? We can attempt all day. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I work out about an hour a day. And so for, a 60-some-odd-year-old guy, I'm in, B-plus shape. I can lift the weights that are in my gym. I can do it a bunch of times. What do you think the chances are that I could lift up 1/1 billionth of 1/1 trillionth of who God is?
Not a chance.
Zero.
And let's just say if I could, what would be the benefit? Who would gain from it? Do you think that there's anything that I could do in terms of lifting up God that's going to do one iota of good for God, even if it were possible, and of course it's not?
No.
No. It's stupid. And imagine how perverted a creator would have to be to create a being that worships him. I mean, oh my God, talk about perverted. And the whole concept of religion is just so utter nonsense. And yet, for a being to create an entity for the express purpose of engaging in a relationship so that entity can magnify and benefit and lift up the creation. Oh, that's profound. That's wonderful.
Well, tell me, how would he benefit? How would he benefit from a relationship like that? He certainly couldn't grow. If we often in that situation, we'd be offering nothing.
If I created an ant colony,
you tell me what I know. If I create you and you tell me what I know, or you just tell me how great I am, what does that benefit me really?
Right. If I had the ability to create an ant colony, and I put them in one of those, terrariums. Remember those? I don't know if you ever saw the ant farm things. The plastic on both sides. Yeah. And I trained those ants under threat of annihilation in a fiery a pit. I trained those ants to speak and to tell me in ant talk, "You are great. You, the great creator. I worship you. I lift you up, O great creator." How many times would I have to hear that before I'd say, "There's something seriously wrong with me"?
I made a huge mistake.
I've had enough.
I made a huge mistake. This is really revolting. I mean, why is it that people can't pull back far enough to recognize that a worship service, a praise service, lifting God up and prayer is just the dumbest idea? Perverted.
Well, the thing is, most of them are people that would love to have people do that to them. Yeah, that's, of course, that's their mindset. They want to be worshipped like that, so they think God wants to. Exactly. Yeah, they seek praise. Politicians seek praise. So you look at the current president of the United States, he is so fixated on everybody saying wonderful things about him that when the press and the opposing political party says anything that's critical, and boy, he has lots of reasons to be criticized, he has an absolute conniption fit. I mean, he just cannot handle it. That's the nature of humanity. God is not insecure. He's not perverted. He absolutely does not want to praise us. He doesn't want us lifting him up. But he is absolutely capable of and desirous of and committed to lifting us up. That's the reason why I'm so relaxed around God. I've got all sorts of dings and make lots of mistakes, but I'm very comfortable around him, and I just feel I have this understanding that our relationship is such that he's happy when I study his word, when I learn something, when I share something, and that just tickles him no end. And he's looking forward to all the fun times we'll continue to have together. And his commitment is to do everything in his power to make my life in eternity with him as absolutely as enjoyable and productive as can possibly be imagined. And so I just relax in that. It's like, cuddling up with a person that you absolutely trust and trust completely. Little marvelous thing, and somebody who's fun and entertaining and accommodating. It's marvelous. So that's the next statement here, is that God's commitment is to rearing children as a father, helping us grow, helping us become great. I raised them. I took them to a higher place. What is the higher place?
Well, him in seventh dimension.
His home. Yeah, you betcha.
Home.
You betcha.
Mm-hmm.
A higher place. Yeah, and when God's talking about higher, he's not talking about, up there in the sky. That there is, it's still 3.5 dimensions out there in Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri and all of the galaxies and solar systems out there in the universe. They're still in our same 3.5 dimensions. He's talking about taking us to 6. Each step up from 3.5 to 4, from 4 to 5, from 5 to 6 is an infinite increase, and not only capability, but an infinite increase in the overall magnitude of what we will experience. A two-dimensional construct can't even fathom the infinite increase in both capability and in
overall environment that exists in 3D. Just as we cannot fathom what it would be like to be liberated in time. I mean, it's so phenomenal, which, time is the fourth dimension. And when you think about how restrictive it is to be in the ordinary flow of time, if time were no longer a restriction, if we were no longer stuck in it, then right now we can't even get to Mars. And it's the next planet in the solar system. Much less get outside of the solar system, much less get to the next solar system, which would be Alpha and Proxima Centauri, much less get to any other solar system within our galaxy, much less get to any other galaxy. And there's hundreds of billions of galaxies. That's because we're stuck in time. But if time were something that could be maneuvered as easily as width and depth and height, then all of a sudden you can get anywhere, past or future. I mean, just to be liberated in time is such an extraordinary thing beyond where we currently are, and to be able to enjoy being unrestricted by time. And that's just moving into the fourth dimension. So that when God says, I'm taking you to a higher place, that's what he means. And then this comment that you emphasized, but they have actually rebelled against me. Now, so you asked a rhetorical question. What does that mean? You know what it means, but why would humankind rebel against the creator of the universe? Particularly, why would you rebel when the creator said, these are the 5 things I want from you. I want you to meet with me 7 times a year. These are the 5 things I want from you. I want you to walk away from and separate yourself from your country, from politics, from religion, from your society, and from your, the family of man. And I want
done
you.
And done.
Yeah. Advantageous. The more you understand the nature of government and religion and the military, the more you realize that it is to our advantage to disassociate ourselves from them and to distrust them. They aren't worthy of our trust. So it's an actual advantage. And then next is, to trust and rely on Yahweh, to realize that he can be trusted, that he's willing to provide everything that we need. Trust and rely on him instead of a religion. Not along with, but in absolute instead of. And then you move to, and walk to me and become perfect. He provided this path, which Zion is the signpost along that way.
Exactly. Right.
He provided, walk to me and become perfect, the path to become perfect. It happened to be the second step along the way. And then, he says, and closely examine and carefully consider the terms and conditions of my covenant. That's the family. And then circumcise your sons on the 8th day, so that they remember and you remember my covenant. That's all he asks.
Every single one of those is a benefit for you.
That is correct. So then you would have to say, okay, that being the case, why would anybody turn that down? Because the benefits of the covenant are eternal life, perfection, adoption into God's family, enrichment and empowerment. Why would anybody rebel against that?
Well, they either don't believe it or trust it. They don't understand it, perhaps, or they don't want it. It's about the only three I can come to mind. So
they have been indoctrinated into accepting something in lieu of it. You mean look at all the pagan religions of yesteryear. Look at the lie that is Pauline Christianity, that they prefer those deceptions and lies.
Therefore, they don't want it because they have something else to replace it with,
right.
Which is a great job.
The guys that would say, you're not going to impugn my church.
Yeah, you're not going to take my Jesus from me.
You're not going to take my Jesus from me. I mean, it's all that stuff is in rebellion against Yahowah. And the Yehudim, as we'll find out, their rebellion was to be religious. That was their rebellion. They were religious, they were political, they were militaristic. They relied on human institutions as opposed to God. And when in the case of Shamuel, when the people of Israel told Shamuel, we want a king like all the other Gentile nations. We want the king to lead us, and you're getting old, Shamuel, so you're not the right guy. So we want a tall, handsome, good-looking, media-savvy guy to lead us. And when Shamuel said, "God, I'm really disappointed. I mean, how did I fail you in this way? They've rejected me." And I said, "No. They're not rejecting you.
They're rejecting me."
Yeah, they're rejecting me. And that's the bottom line here. When you choose government, when you choose religion, and that's the statement that he's making here. So they rebelled against me. And he very clear. I mean, Shamuel is a beautiful presentation of how choosing a political system, a political leader, is rejecting God. Because you can rely on the political leader and follow the political leader, or you can follow God. They do not go in the same direction. Now, this is the next statement. Why don't you go ahead and read the next statement?
This to me is always quite amusing. A cow, one who looks, sees what's around him, and views the world from a proper perspective, is aware and recognizes his Creator as one who gave birth to him, but not an ass, a stubborn, domesticated beast of burden regarding his Lord. Israel, those who struggle and fight with God, does not know and remains unaware. My people have failed to consider this connection, and thus they do not understand. Yeah, I'm sure
wow.
The end.
Yeah, and that's just great. And God's got a sense of humor.
He does,
a cow is not a very smart animal.
No.
Okay. But he's saying, listen, a cow at least knows what's around him. The calf knows its mother, knows who gave its birth, recognizes its Creator. But an ass. And Israel, you're asses. America, you're asses.
Yeah.
An ass, Muslims, they're wild asses of men. You're asses. An ass, a stubborn domestic beast of burden. They haven't got a clue.
No.
They don't even know who their Lord is. And that's what is so profound about this, because what he's saying is they don't know who their Lord is. They don't know. Christians and Muslims do not know that their Lord is Satan.
This is just another affirmation of what we talked about, with Moody Jeff and, God grading on a curve.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You don't know.
You don't know.
That's all he says. He's not like, well, you tried to know, but you didn't quite get there. You don't know.
No. You don't
You're
know.
an ass.
You don't know. You are an ass. And because you're an ass and because you do not know, you are unaware of who your Lord is. You do not know your Lord. I know your Lord. Your Lord sure as hell ain't me. Your Lord is Satan. Clueless. There isn't a Muslim in the world that knows that Allah is Satan. And yet he obviously is. There isn't a Christian in the world that is aware that their Lord is Satan. And yet he obviously is. So he's saying, you're asses. You don't know who your Lord is. That's extraordinarily insightful statement. And why is it that they don't know? You failed
they
to
just don't get it. They don't understand it. But really, it's because they don't study the Torah if you get right down to it.
Yeah, because you failed to consider. You do not know. You
willfully
are unaware. Right. You haven't made the connection. You're ignorant.
Well, it's probably
irrational.
why he started out with, you need to shamar.
Right.
If you're not going to shamar the Torah, you're not going to shamar what I said, then you're not going to know. Where else would you find it?
Between being part of the covenant family and God considering you to be an ass is knowing. My people are destroyed because they do not know. The way to Yahweh is by knowing. If you do not know him, if you do not know what he is offering, if you do not know what he is expecting, if you do not know what he is asking and offering, then you fall under the ass category. God's not saying here that, I just love them in spite of themselves. They're cute little asses. No. Even the cow reference is
that's not a plus.
That's not a plus. If he's going to talk about an animal and use an animal in a beneficial sense, it's going to be one of two animals: lambs, which a lamb is a far more is an animal that likes to live in a community, that will follow a leader, that loves interacting with humans as part of a shepherd, that's not vicious. He's going to use lamb. Or the other animal that he is used to describe, this, they get it because there's no hierarchy at the ant.
Mm-hmm.
But the cow is not a positive, and the ass is a decided negative. It also ties into the Torah. While Ishmael's descendants will be wild asses of men. Their hand will be raised against their brother's hand will be raised against them, and they will live in hostility against the whole world. He's describing Muslims in that particular case. You know what beast that Muhammad claimed that he rode?
He rode
from
winged ass.
Jerusalem. A winged ass. Yeah, a winged ass.
Pretty Brent, if you like to say.
Yeah. So God is saying that the thing that you failed to do that causes you to be a stupid, stubborn ass who is unaware of who your Lord is you're unaware, you're ignorant, and you don't make the necessary connections. You're irrational. It's just
ignorance is far from bliss. Ignorance is death.
Mm-hmm.
I got a letter from Lisa that came in, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, and she was talking about Paul's fixation with mystery, the Greek word for mystery, which is mystery is actually a transliteration of the Greek word for mystery. And says, it's used 10 different times, and Paul is constantly proclaiming these great mysteries. God doesn't proclaim mysteries. God wants to be known. And, her comment was, how could you be so stupid as not to be able to figure this out, that Paul's fixation on mystery means that he is in association with Mystery Babylon.
Yes, mystery religion, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Why can't Christians make the connection between Mystery Babylon and Paul's fixation on mystery, which he uses no fewer than 10 times? It's because they're ignorant and they don't think.
Well,
why is it that Christians don't know what this? That Paul admitted that he was demon possessed. That they don't acknowledge the fact that Paul quoted Dionysus' most famous line on his conversion experience. Why don't they think of the fact that he had the exact opposite experience, that anyone that met with Yeshua, the blind came to see, the lame were able to walk, and yet he was struck as a seeing man blind and as a walking man lame.
Mm-hmm.
So who's the opposite of Yosha?
Well, obviously,
whoever he met with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Satan.
The Lord.
The Lord. Absolutely. The Lord. Satan. Baal. So let's go on to 1:4.
Okay. Woe to the errant and blameworthy nation, acting like Gentiles, severely stubborn and heavily laden, dulled and unresponsive with the corruption and the guilt associated with perverted distortions. They are the offsprings of errant and evil children who have become corrupt and destroyed because of their lack of integrity. They have rejected and abandoned Yahweh. They despise and actually revile, harboring contempt for the set-apart one of Israel. They have become strangers, alienating themselves. Having gone backwards, they are headed in the wrong direction.
Okay, well,
there.
From God's perspective, those who are ignorant and irrational are errant and blameworthy.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, ignorance ain't bliss.
Yeah.
Those who have rebelled against him are acting like Gentiles.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the odds are that God created a Gentile church when he said, don't be like the Gentiles?
Yeah.
So he's equating blameworthy, errants, Gentiles. And by the way, I'm a Gentile in the sense of, for the best I know, I don't have any Jewish ethnicity, but I am not like the Gentiles. My ethnicity is Gentile, but God's not talking about ethnicity here with Gentile. He's talking about the ways of the Gentile, acting like the Gentiles.
Acting like, yeah.
I don't act like the Gentiles because I'm part of the covenant. And I've chosen to disassociate myself from the ways of the Gentile to be part of the covenant.
Well, it's that whole thing of being grafted in. Once you're grafted in, you're considered the same as the original tree.
Right.
Exactly. Well, racially you may be Gentile. In God's eyes, you are not Gentile.
Correct.
Well, I think it'd be even if once your perspective has changed, you can never not see it. You can choose not to participate, but you can never not see it once you get it. So
Correct. So, is that dulled and unresponsive, and that really is the key. Yahweh has laid out 7 annual invitations for us to meet with Him, and less than 1,000 people actually respond. Now, you might say, well, that's not fair. They're practicing Jews, and there's probably 3 million of them. There's probably 15 million Jews on the planet, but of Orthodox Jews that are adhering to the what they don't even refer to as Moed or Mikre, and they call them Jewish holidays. That they observe Passover and Yom Kippurim. Yes. But they answer those invitations from a back-asswards way. They think that Passover represents something that took place in the national life of Israel. It's not what Passover represents.
Yeah.
Passover represents the doorway to life. There's less than 1,000 people that answer the invitation and celebrate Pesach as the doorway to life. There's less than 1,000 people on the planet today that celebrate and answer Yahweh's invitation to attend matzah as the means to perfection. There are less than 1,000 people on the planet today that answer Yahweh's invitation and celebrate Bokurim, firstborn children, as the day that celebrates our adoption into Yahweh's family. And there's less than 1,000 people on the planet today that celebrate Shabuah, which means the promise of the Shabbat, the promise of 7, as Yahweh's promise to enrich and empower us in accordance with His covenant's benefits. So, we are unresponsive. Yahweh has laid out 5 conditions of the covenant. We've articulated them.
Mm-hmm.
There's less than 1,000 people that have responded to those conditions.
Staggering.
So people are unresponsive. They prefer their corruptions, and they're guilty by association with all their perverted distortions. And it doesn't matter if the perverted distortions are Judaism, Christianity, Orthodox and Roman Catholic variations of Christianity, Scientology, Islam, Mormonism,
Buddhism,
socialist, secular humanism. They're all perverted distortions. And we are, as a culture, as a community, to a large degree, the product of our forefathers, just as we corrupt our children. And that's what he's saying, is that society...
That's from his tablet of stones again.
That's the reason why the first condition of the covenant is to walk away from your family, from your father's house. Why? Because it's the forefathers that have created this corruption. George Washington was a Freemason. That was the single most important driving force in his life. And Freemasonry, the god of Freemasonry is the Lord, Satan.
And he was right at the top.
Of the founding fathers, there's probably only one founding father that at least had separated himself from the majority of the corruption of man. That'd be Thomas Jefferson. He knew that Paul was a
liar,
was a false prophet, a liar.
False prophet.
Yeah, he wrote about it.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that the integration of church and state was a horrible thing. He knew that the only thing that mattered with Yahusha was his words and his words only. That's why it's all he had as part of his text.
Yeah, I've actually seen his Bible where he cut it up and repasted.
Yeah.
There's not much left.
Yeah. Right. And so you'd have to say, he at least understood a lot of what we need to know to make our way to Yahweh. Whether he actually took the next step and came to know Yahweh, I doubt it. But he's the only one that did lead America in the wrong direction. Our forefathers are the problem.
Yes.
Then he says that
won't fly around.
You lack integrity.
Yeah.
Now, I look at all the people that are protesting Trump. There's this huge walkout in the Hispanic community of restaurants and businesses to protest Trump. And Trump's not, and as it relates to Hispanics, he's not doing anything different than Obama and his predecessors have done. But they want to protest him, and there's all sorts of rebellion. Those who are protesting lack integrity. They are what they condemn.
True.
They have rejected and abandoned Yahweh. If you choose to be religious, you're abandoning and rejecting God. If you choose to be patriotic, you're rejecting and abandoning God. If you choose to be militaristic and to support the military, you're abandoning and rejecting Yahweh. And he wants you to know that. You cannot be religious without abandoning him. You cannot be patriotic or political without abandoning God. It's a choice. And that's why he says that he is the set-apart one of Israel. That powerful concept. What does set-apart mean?
Well, it's what you have to be to get away from everybody else, to be next to him.
Yeah, it means you're set apart from the rest of the world.
From something.
You're set apart from something. Right. And since he's communicating to humans in this world, and he's condemning the human society, and he's saying that he's set apart, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that he's set apart from the human institutions of religion and politics and militarism and patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
From set apart from human distortions. Set apart from ignorance. By the way, and if he's set apart, guess what he cannot be? Omnipresent.
Yeah, right. Another myth going down the tube.
Yep. So he says that they have become strangers, alienating themselves. Now, if they are strangers, alienating themselves, God is not all accepting or all loving, is it? Is he?
No. He
so the religious concept of God being, that's the Urantia, the thing that somebody in the that was part of claimed to be part of the covenant, who then started promoting Urantia. Yeah, Urantia is that God is all loving, and that God has loves all of humanity. And no, he says you've become strangers, alienated yourself. No, he's not all accepting.
That concept is never found in the Torah.
No, of course not.
I mean,
having gone backwards, they're headed in the wrong direction. So the direction of society as a whole,
mm-hmm.
and in religious and in political Israel, the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
You can walk towards God, you can walk away from it. God only has one direction that works, and that's what Zion is so important, because it's a signpost posted along the way in the one and only right direction. All other directions are wrong. It's just like, people will say that all religions are like a wheel with God in the center, and that and they all lead to God. Well, if anybody understands the concept of centrifugal force and what the purpose of a wheel is to roll, and all of the spokes of a wheel, once the wheel is rolling, doing what it was designed for, lead people away from the center. So religions are like the spokes on a wheel. They all lead away from God, from the center. Now, having gone backwards, they're headed in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So God's not reaching out and saying, boy, I really love you. You're just really, we got a couple of maybe misunderstandings, but all in all, things are really good. No.
No, you have to walk the path. That metaphor he uses is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
You have to walk
So
the path.
what does he say next there, Kirk?
The path are wrong. Sir?
What does he say next? 5 and 6.
For what reason and on whose account do you want to be continually afflicted and devastated over and over again, associating with and adding to your obstinance and your hostile rebellion? The entire head is impaired with disease. The entire heart, and thus the ability to exercise good judgment, is cramped up and infirmed. From the sole of the foot and all the way up to the top of the head, there is nothing in them that is healthy or sound. They are emasculated and castrated, battered and bruised. Their raw and rotten wounds from devastating and deadly plague, interesting, have not been cleansed, medicated, nor bandaged, not even soothed with olive oil.
It reminds me of how I had an author of a Islamic book that was an absolute idiot. He condemned me personally for being anti-Semitic, because one of the things that I wrote in Prophet of Doom was that if it were not for religious Jews, the rabbis in particular, in Yathrib, Islam would not exist. It shows, and the evidence is undeniable, that they read Talmud stories to Muhammad. And Muhammad used those Talmud stories to comprise much of the Quran, twisted and bastardized them, and then they mocked Muhammad for claiming that those stories came from Allah, and they mocked Muhammad for getting all those stories twisted and bastardized. And so I said, the curse of Islam particularly has it seeks to destroy Jews, kill them, is largely because Jews, religious Jews, chose to sell Muhammad Talmud stories. Had they not done so, the curse of Islam would not exist. And he says, to blame Jews for Islam is anti-Semitic.
No, it's realistic.
No. It's holding people accountable for what they have done. Now, and my response was, if holding Jews accountable for doing the wrong thing is anti-Semitic, then guess who's anti-Semitic? The author of the Torah prophets.
No, it holds them accountable. No.
You can't read anything that would be more anti-Yisrael than this particular statement. God is saying, you brought all this upon yourself. You deserve the consequence. It's just like I said, you brought Islam on yourself. Had you not sold Muhammad those Talmud stories, Islam wouldn't exist. He ran out of material. He wasn't that smart. God holds people
accountable. It'd be like saying that I'm anti-American because I say, America brought 9/11 on itself. No, I just examined the evidence and drew the conclusion. Now, I am anti-American, but I'm not anti-American for saying that.
No. I had a person wrote me a letter and said, they really enjoy the evidences that are presented in Yada Yahweh and Intro to God, and the best place to come to know who Yahweh is and what He is offering. But he says, I want to scream when I hear you talk about 9/11 and the naivete of saying that it was done by Muslims as opposed to they were brought down by controlled demolition by the United States. He says, so I'm still into the conspiracy theory. My response to him was really simple. Trust Yahweh, reject conspiracy.
There you go.
If you're willing to believe that which is profoundly untrue, then you have to. I would question whether or not your conviction and what Yahweh has revealed is legitimate. I mean, if you can be convinced of conspiracy lies, then you're not playing with a full deck.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd have to question. I don't want somebody to write me and say, the argument that you make on behalf of Yahowah by correctly translating his testimony is convincing. It's rational, and then say, and oh, by the way, I believe that 9/11 is the conspiracy theories on 9/11 is true. It had nothing to do with Muslims flying airplanes. It was the airplanes, they didn't exist. It was controlled demolition by the United States government for X, Y, Z reason. Then my response is, you've just destroyed whatever credibility you had established previously.
By the way, Yahweh said, don't do the conspiracy thing.
Conspiracy thing. Don't go there. Don't go there. Trust what I have to say to you. Reject government, sure. Condemn government, but don't go to the conspiracy, because the conspiracy destroys your credibility. You can't be an effective witness for Yahweh if you're going to speak on behalf of conspiracy, because you destroy your credibility. We dearly love Larry, and while Larry hasn't mentioned a conspiracy now in years, there was a period of time where Larry was advocated some conspiracies, and I said, listen, Larry, what you choose to believe in terms of these conspiracies is up to you, but don't speak about them. And particularly, do not speak about them in the same context you're talking about Yahweh, because you'll destroy your credibility. And our credibility is essential when it comes to Yahweh's testimony.
If you're going to be a messenger, you probably ought to stick to the message.
You need to stick to the message. And if you're going to be a credible messenger, you can't say things about Yahweh that are true and spice it in with things that are obviously untrue, because it destroys your credibility regarding that which is true. Stick to what you know.
Yeah.
Now, I'll speak about 9/11 because I am an expert when it comes to Islam. I've studied it. I know its mentality. I watched it take place. I know what occurred. I know who conceived the plot, Ramzi Youssef. I know how the plot was carried out, communicated. I know what was spoken in those voice recorders. It was Allahu Akbar. When God is talking about here, you're ignorant, you're irrational, it is so essential to understand the totality of Yahweh's presentation, to view it in context, just like we began that first statement. You need to understand this is not new material. God is speaking of something that he has already spoken of. He's speaking of something he has already done. And so he's speaking of the Torah's covenant, the family relationship. That's essential to understanding. One of the things that we humans do the worst, and we emulate Satan when we do this, is to take a conversation or instruction out of context
and twist it,
misrepresent what was said, and then derive a contrary, negative, inappropriate conclusion based upon our taking it out of context and misconstruing what was said. And the reason that's so devastating is because it isn't an outright lie. It's a corruption of the truth. It's a misrepresentation. And therefore, the lie is given credibility. It's much more difficult to refute, and it is far more destructive. Now, in the case of Yisrael, we say to them, why are you continuing to do this for yourself? I mean, we've had a relationship, and over the years, I've told you this is what's going to draw us closer together, and here's the benefits. And I've told you if you rebel and choose to reject what I'm offering, this will be the consequence. So why do you continually choose disaster? I'm offering you perfection. I'm offering you enrichment. I'm offering you empowerment. And you continue to choose to bring a living hell upon yourselves. Why do you do that? Why? You choose to try to protect yourselves, and you do a really bad job as opposed to relying on me to protect you. And he's saying that your thinking is impaired. It's diseased. Your ability to exercise good judgment is got menstrual cramps.
Yeah.
From the sole of your foot to the top of your head. There's nothing that's healthy and sound. I mean, you're emasculated. You're castrated. You're raw and rotten. And you're sitting there with these oozing religious and political wounds. They're not even bandaged. You're just oozing. Yeah. That's how God sees religious people.
Yeah.
Open
Great
wounds.
choice and deadly plague, though. Paul.
Yeah, deadly plague. Yeah, Paul is the deadly plague.
Plague of death.
Yeah, and you cannot separate Paul from Israel. He was a Benjamite.
Yes, he was.
Okay, so 1:7 and 1:8.
Okay, your land will become lifeless and ruined. Your cities, your towns will be consumed by fire. Your soil, conspicuously in your presence, will be devoured and destroyed by illegitimate foreign foes and most nauseating of horrors. They will bring devastating perversity and adversarial transformations akin to being overthrown by alien enemies.
Yeah, I told you, although I told you to go ahead and read 8, let's just speak of that for a moment.
Okay, you want to stop there a second? Okay.
There is Israel was destroyed multiple times. The first was by the Assyrians.
Assyrians, and then the Babylonians.
Yep. And then the Babylonians. And then the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Romans that made Israel a lifeless ruin.
Yeah.
Now, the cities were also destroyed by the Assyrians and the Babylonians that were consumed by fire. The soil was devoured by the Romans. The Romans were the only ones to actually salt the land of Israel. They destroyed the soil. They're the only ones to destroy the soil. So the ones that destroyed the soil are being referred to as illegitimate foreign foes and nauseating whores. He's speaking of Rome.
Yeah.
What grew out of Rome?
Oh, the Roman Church, of course. The Astarte becomes
Right.
Mary and the baby. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when Yahweh is speaking of the whore of Babylon,
Mm-hmm.
therefore, who is he talking about?
He's talking about the Roman Catholic Church, of course.
Yes, that is correct. And it was Rome that brought the devastating perversity and adversarial transformation upon Israel. They even renamed it Palestina, akin to being overthrown by alienated enemies. I mean, no one did to Israel what Rome did. That's why God considers Rome to be the second worst of all human institutions. The only human institution worse than imperial Rome, presented in Daniel, is what grew out of imperial Rome. Now we reach the first of several mentions of the word that brought us to chapter 8 of Observations.
Okay.
Go ahead now.
But the daughter of Zion, the conspicuous signpost to mark the way, will be preserved and left as a reminder. It will be like a sheltered place for living in a vineyard, like an overnight cottage for a watchman in a challenging, ill-treated garden filled with stubble and chaff, like an awkward encampment preserved by the observant. Unless Yahweh, shall I go on?
Well, let's just talk about that.
Okay.
The daughter of Zion. The mountains have daughters?
No.
No.
Can there be a female offspring of the word and message of Yahweh?
Well,
Yes.
Yeah. Set apart spirit, right?
Our spirit is figure.
Yeah. Set apart spirit would be a feminine representation of the word and message of Yahweh.
Right.
So the daughter of Zion, as opposed to the nauseating whore, the daughter of Zion, the feminine representation of Zion, which is the conspicuous signs posted to mark the way, will be preserved and left as a reminder. Yahweh didn't remove the set-apart spirit, did he?
No.
No. And her message is still left as a reminder.
Yes.
The set-apart spirit is like a sheltered space for living in a vineyard. She is like an overnight cottage in an ill-kept, ill-treated garden filled with stubble and chaff. That would be the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
She is an awakening, an encampment, a place where the observant are preserved. He is hereby equating Zion with the feminine manifestation of Yahweh's nature, the set-apart spirit. He is associating Zion with the means to preserve life. He is associating Zion as a reminder, as something that says, yes, the land has been perverted and destroyed by an adversarial foe. But I am not abandoning it. There's still going to be the Zion here. There's still going to be conspicuous here in the midst of this place, my presence. And that my presence, this Zion, will be like a watchman in an ill-treated garden. Like someone who's paying attention in a garden that is filled with people who are clueless.
Well, that's kind of us, eh?
Yeah. An encampment of those who are preserved by being observant.
It always comes back to being observant, doesn't it?
Yeah. We are Zion. As the covenant family, we are Zion. We're the offspring of Zion. That's exactly who we are. And we're as conspicuous as we can be, pointing the signs along the way. A watchman in the midst of an ill-treated garden.
Oh.
You know, an encampment by those of us who are observant.
Yeah.
So now 9 says?
Okay, unless Yahweh of the host of spiritual messengers has not spared and preserved a remnant on our behalf, as a few survivors, then like Sodom, scorched and burning, we would have been an approaching Gomorrah, a tyrannical, manipulated, depressed habitation. We would be likened to and compared to them, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Yahweh says, I left these signposts, these conspicuous signs posted along the way. The Torah, the covenant family.
I was going to say, and it's also feminine, so that ties in once again with
the covenant family is feminine. The Torah is feminine.
Yes.
The set-apart spirit is feminine. Mount Moriah, the place where Zion took place, the signposts are posted, is feminine. All of those things are feminine. So Yahweh of the host of spiritual messengers, if he had not preserved a remnant on our behalf, who's the remnant? The covenant family.
Well, it was at the time it was the certain Jews, but now it's people like us.
It's us.
Yeah. Covenant. That's right. Covenant family. Unless there was a remnant, a few survivors, then we would be like Sodom. In Sodom, there were 4 survivors, weren't there?
Well, yes, they walked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were 4 survivors. My guess is that Sodom may have been in the range of 400,000 people. Could have been 100,000 to 1. It could have been 40,000 people. That would be 10,000 to 1. No, that's the kind of numbers we're looking at here, and so we're a remnant, a few survivors. And then it's important to understand, what does Sodom represent? Sodom in Hebrew means scorched and burning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when stubble chaff is scorched and burned, it's nothing left.
No.
You just cease to exist.
Dust.
Yeah, right. Ceases to exist. And
Boy.
Gomorrah is a tyrannical and manipulated, depressed habitation. What reminds me of much of the world today. Tyrannical, life, and that's what we would be if it were not for the remnant as a few voices here. And those voices are in Sodom. They're in Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then it says...
It says, choose to listen to the word of Yahweh, leaders of the scorched and burning, and listen intently, perceiving what is said, and then respond appropriately to the Torah teaching, guidance, direction, and instructions of our God, you people of the tyrannical and manipulated habitation.
Wow.
Well, we're in that, once again, reiterates that, doesn't he?
Right. So, obviously, Zion is the word of Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Zion is the Torah teaching of Yahweh.
Right.
Obviously, those host of spiritual messengers that are the remnant of few survivors are sharing the word of Yahweh, encouraging people to listen. Obviously, they're asking people to respond appropriately to the Torah. The way out of Sodom and Gomorrah, therefore, is to listen to the word of Yahweh and to respond to the Torah teaching of our God.
Right, he's giving you the solution. Take it.
That is the solution. That is the answer. Yeah. You know, it's an open book test. That is the answer. Only one right answer. Word of God.
This is not a mystery religion.
Right. Listen to the word of God and respond to his Torah.
Appropriately, yes.
So
he goes on to say, what means do you think that I can be approached by the great multitudes, exalting aspects and rabbinic nature of your sacrifices? Asked Yahweh. I have literally fulfilled, satisfied, and completed the uplifting offerings to rise associated with the male lambs. Moreover, the lipid tissues of the overfed fatlings and the blood of bulls, lambs, and goats I do not want nor desire. For if you try to approach to look upon my presence, who or what was it that sought this beggary from your hand, thereby to tread upon the blowing of the trumpets in my court?
Well, this is a powerful statement again, and it takes a lot of thinking to pull all of these pieces together. Mm-hmm. So God is saying that the way out of Sodom, the way out of Gomorrah, is to listen to his testimony and to respond to his Torah guidance. And by contrast, he's saying, but all you religious buffoons out there, what makes you think that I can be approached? You know, the Torah is how I can be approached. That's the signs posted along the way. They're in the Torah. That's how I can be approached. But by contrast, what is it that makes you think that I can be approached with the great magnitude and the exalted aspects of your sacrifices? You know, this idea that if you really dig deep and make big donations to God, you're somehow going to be viewed favorably with him. You can buy an indulgence. You know, dig deep, write that check to the pastor, and that God thinks that you can be approach me by the magnitude of your sacrifice. No. By what means do you think that can be approached that way? God said, listen, I've given you the means to approach me, and you want to replace that with your gifts? What am I going to do with your gifts? Do you think I need lambs? Do you think I need money? Is there anything you have that is a benefit to me? No. What idiot would believe that this is somehow, beneficial? And then he said, okay, on the sacrifices, he says, I've literally fulfilled them. I've satisfied them. I've completed the uplifting offerings to rise with the male lambs. I've done it. I don't need something from you. I've already done it. Moreover, the fatty tissue of overfed fatlings and the blood of bulls, lambs, and goats, I do not want and I do not desire. If you try to approach to look upon my presence, who was it that sought this beggary from your hands? To tread upon the blowing of in my court. And you say, blowing of my trumpets in my court. And so that required some study. We went through it in a previous program. The blowing of the trumpets is when Yahweh was announcing around his the tabernacle the approach of the invitations to be called out and to meet with him, the Moed Mikre. They would blow the trumpets, which was the wind instrument, the ram's horn, signifying this is I'm sending out the message for you to come and to meet with me in my home, in my tent, and in my family house, in my household, and so the blowing of trumpets in his court was to announce the presence, the imminent presence of one of the Moed Mikre. And so you can't, when you're offering God alternative sacrifices as opposed to answering, RSVPing to, acknowledging his invitations to meet and meeting with him on the days that he has prescribed, if you're thinking that you're going to win favor with God by offering some sacrifice that you're offering as opposed to accepting the sacrifice that he has already made, then you're an idiot. You're arrogant, you're deceived, you're flat out wrong.
Mm-hmm. You bring nothing to the table.
You're bringing nothing to the table. I've already set the table.
What if Yahweh's short on cash?
Hello, Larry. Yeah, I think so. I think that Yahweh really was looking for some dollar bills. He wants some promissory
I think
notes.
the guy who created the entire universe and everything in it, if he really needed money,
some folding money.
I think he could just create it.
I think
you've got to be
money,
kidding, JB.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble if he needs money. Can you imagine in heaven that there's a currency?
No, I can't. I think there's a currency. It's called a relationship, and that's the extent of the currency.
That's the one thing Yahweh wants from you: your time.
Your time.
The one thing that grows a relationship is time. Spend time with him.
Yeah, but it's not just time. It's time where you're engaged, where you're listening, where you're observing.
Time engaged with him.
Correct. That is correct. And
well, Yahweh knows there's a lot to observe today. A lot.
Yeah,
there are so many insane possibilities out there, thought processes. Everybody wants their own path instead of looking at the Torah as the map that it is. They want 100 reasons. I've seen people go over your work, Craig, and give me 100 reasons why this can't be so. Well, the reason it can't be so is because they don't even understand Yahweh's nature. They're not listening. They're not putting two and two together. I got to be honest with you. I don't want to be around people that can't add two and two. I don't even like them. I really don't.
And I wouldn't have any problem if somebody could give, let's be realistic, they could give 5 reasons as to why why a word that I've translated to like anah, answer and respond, should be afflict. And if they can provide 5 reasons as to why anah should be translated afflict as opposed to answer and respond, then at least they're making a somewhat cogent argument.
Yeah, at least they looked at one lexicon.
Yes, they looked up one lexicon and looked at like the 5th definition of the word, and they of course ignored the first 4 definitions of the word or the context that it's being presented in. But at least they would be using evidence and reason to advance their case. If they instead take the position that what I have done in terms of rendering Yahweh's testimony and commenting on what he said by making the connections that he encourages us to make, and to compare everything that Yahweh has said in context so that we have understanding. If they're saying, I will give you 100 reasons why that cannot be true, then they're absolute morons. Because
the problem
it's not my statements. We're going from what Yahweh said. Here, we're reading what Yahweh said and then commenting on it.
Things have to match. Things have to match. If we are creatures of free will, and we all have to agree that there is no such a relationship without free will. I mean,
right.
you can't force somebody and, Peter, pumpkin eater. You can't do that to people and them live an abundant life and you have an abundant relationship. It just cannot be done. There's people that do this. They're called slave traders. I think, that's what Mo did,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, have you ever known anyone who was in an abusive relationship?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the example. If you've ever known anyone who's in that relationship, they will say all the right things. They will do all the right things to keep the abuser happy, but they don't love them. They don't care for them. They will say they love them, but you could tell,
that's sort of like a religious relationship. I love this being that forces me into submission, and mitzvah means command, and shamar means obey, and blah, blah, and we have this relationship sort of like, okay, go fetch Spot, and you throw a bone.
I would say the thing that's most perplexing to me is to be opposed to, like for example, what we're reading here, to be opposed to God's condemnation here, and this is an overt condemnation on religion. To be opposed to that is to say God doesn't know what He's talking about. Leave me out of it. It's just to say God doesn't know what He's talking about. I can be fairly criticized based upon my translations, and only if you can create a better one. If you can create a better, more accurate and complete translation, then you have all of the right in the world to be critical. But if you can't, then whose testimony are we dealing with?
I made this comment in the chat room earlier with talking with someone, and I said, I've checked numbers and scores of your translations, and while I may not always agree on the specifics, I've yet to find a single time where, one, I can't see how you got what you got, but two, your conclusions are always sound. There's not once where I'm like, I may disagree with a small detail of the translation, like, okay, that, I wouldn't have done that, but your conclusions from it are, always sound. I've yet to find a single spot where I would disagree with completely error.
I would disagree with nuances of every translation I've ever written. And every time that I go through it and I look at the stems, the moods, the conjugations, the full implications of the words themselves, and in the context it was written in, I'm always able to improve it. 100% of the time.
And what's the big thing?
No exception.
But it's the big thing of it all. It's got to fit His nature. If it doesn't fit Yahweh's nature, I don't have to be nearly as good as any of you three at translation, and don't claim to be. But if somebody told me, I'm going to go get on my knees and pray and obey Yahweh today, I'd say, you're an ass.
Yeah.
And here's
you have no
why.
Clue. Yeah, you have no clue. And don't use the name. Don't use the name if you're clueless as to who he is and what he is asking. And I think that's the reason why in the big picture you said you can't disagree with any of the conclusions, because what we've attempted to do, all of us, is to unify our perspective and conclusions with Yahweh. If our conclusions are consistent with Yahweh's testimony, if He encourages us to shama, listen, and shamar, observe what He has to say, and if and the text that He is asking us to listen to and observe is His Torah guidance and teaching, then, and He says that all of this is in the context of Him wanting to rear us as children and lift us up, it's not hard to understand what His perspective was, or to appreciate the fact that those who rejected Him and rebelled against Him took an approach or a perspective that was inconsistent with a father trying to lift up and raise children by way of His Torah guidance.
Yeah, and anything that changes that perspective, anything that changes the nature of things,
is rebellious.
And this is what the world does, isn't it? This is what we were all taught to do.
That's why we began this, and I said in the first statement that Yahweh makes, you have the single most important perspective that's provided anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. There is nothing more important than recognizing that Yahweh's
prime objective is to be our Father and to raise us as His children. That's what He said.
You remember a few shows back when we were talking about how Babylon was built with, the whitewashed, the sun-dried bricks, and Yahweh came down there to just look around and look at all this stupidity.
Right.
Now here's somebody showing up to look at a situation that's in complete revolt. And what did it tell us about Babylon? Well, it told us, and then you'll worship whatever we tell you to worship.
Right.
And, of course, that's the world today.
Correct. Yeah.
Building
their great monuments to God. That's what they were doing in Babylon, building these great monuments to their gods, their sacrifices, their way. And what were their sacrifices? Usually humans. Revolting. And
they still are today in a number of ways.
Your testimony is Babel. You co-mix, you commingle, you confuse. Babel. You're like the wild ass. You have no idea who your Lord is. Not a clue. You don't know that your Lord is Satan. Every bit of this is consistent with a very simple core understanding, and that Yahweh wants to be our Father. He wants to engage in a family relationship with us, and that His goal is to empower us, to enrich us, and to perfect us, and that He has provided the means to accomplish all of those things. And anything that man says or does that's in conflict with that simple understanding is deadly, is wrong, and has very dire consequences. That's if you were to summarize what he has said through these first 12 statements in Yahshua, that's the summation of them.
Mm-hmm. Every time I've translated something or found something or somebody sent me something that contradicts that concept, I usually find that when you go back, it's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. It's usually when it's and the Masoretic text is pretty darn good, but there are parts where when you run across it, it always seems to be not found. So it's rabbinical playing or later in Christian stuff as well.
Yeah, what I have found is that there's only one statement that I have seen thus far that somebody can cite from the Masoretic text that is inconsistent with God's nature. And it's the one, JB, you and I talked about here that you sent me several weeks ago, a month or so ago. Yeah, and it's the context is it's consistent. Everything's consistent with Yahweh, and Yahweh wants Moshe to go into Mitzrayim and to liberate his children, and he says, I want you to do it in this manner. We're going to be straightforward. We're going to tell them that I'm Yahweh and that this is what I'm offering you, and we're going to liberate you from all of this. And then it moves on to a continuation of that, and there's these two statements that are just completely out of context. Out of nowhere, that talk about Yahweh wanting to kill somebody, and you go,
it's hardly volitional there,
and it's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and is there the possibility that there were three statements that were interspersed there? Absolutely. It's just that
there was something there, but
what we have in the Masoretic does not make sense. There's no context for it. It's completely outside of God's nature. No, it's not against God's nature to want somebody dead. But if he does, he's going to tell you the reasons why that is the case and why it is in everyone's best interest for that being the case. And
he's going to tell you who it is, not just going to use a pronoun. He's going to tell you why he's doing it. I mean, that's the problem with that whole section.
Come on, now I'm going to tell you something else. I'll tell you something else. He's not going to be around long either.
Where, because there's not enough given. There's not enough context given to know who's doing what to who and why.
Well, and he's not going to be around long either. And there's plenty of proof of that. You remember the guys that camped out and they were going to take Jerusalem, and the king, dusted off the Torah. And 185,000 of them died that night. It's not really much of a problem to take a guy out.
If Yahweh wants to take a guy out,
my conclusion in that regard, in that verse, is that either those were not there, or there was more to it that got lost over time somehow. Yeah, that
I, of course, don't know what verse you're talking about.
But there had to have been more to that story that we don't have.
It's a conversation. Is it in Exodus? In Shemot, I think it is. Yeah, and it's Yahweh is being redundant and being very clear with Moshe. It's regarding the mission at hand and how he is to go into Mitzrayim and say precisely what Yahweh wants to say. He's going to do precisely what Yahweh wants done, and he's telling them this is how the Pharaoh's going to respond, and regardless of how he responds, this is our plan. You're going in, you're representing me. You're going to say what I want to say. You're going to do what I want done, and we're going to come out with the children of Israel, and it's not going to be good for Pharaoh. And he's not going to respond favorably. And he says that, and he says it again, and he says it again. In the midst of this, there are these three lines that are not found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where it speaks of a woman, and it speaks of a son, and it doesn't say who the son is or what the son has done, and that Yahweh wants them dead. And you go, wait a minute.
What?
This is completely
like
out of context.
Either it was not there or there was more to it.
Right.
I'm the kind of guy I like to give benefit of the doubt. Perhaps there was more to this story that got lost over time. When transferring scroll to scroll to scroll. Somehow there was something to this story that got lost, perhaps.
Or it was.
But as it stands, it makes no sense.
Added by the translator.
Yeah. Because the only sons that are going to die are the sons of those who are not protected by the blood of the Passover lamb on the doorway to life. I mean, those are the sons that are going to die, and he isn't telling that story at this point. So but the point was, is there anything in the Torah, the prophets, and the Psalms that is inconsistent with this view of Yahweh as our Heavenly Father, wanting to lift up and benefit the children of the covenant, and being opposed to those who take a contrarian view to who he is and what he's offering? And the only two examples of that I'm aware of are the one that passage that we've just talked about, where I can't. I've just told you that I'm not even going to bother to translate it because it's impossible to make sense of it, and it's not in context, so this context doesn't help. That, and then the mistranslation of words like Anna as afflict as opposed to answer and respond, or
and the 22nd Mizmor was another one where they intentionally changed,
the Masoretic, right?
To lions at mauling my feet or so forth.
Yeah, as opposed to
Roa
piercing my hands and feet. And there's places where chawa, the Hebrew word for make a declaration, is changed to, and it's to make a declaration regarding life, is changed to bow down and worship. Yeah, bow down and worship. Sure. And there's no justification for bow down and worship, and there's enormous evidence that it means to make a declaration, a statement regarding life, and it's actually the basis of the Hebrew word chaya and chawa, the wife and companion of Adam. So those are the only two places where I've seen something different.
Once your perspective is right, once you know just a modicum amount of this stuff, it's very easy to spot these things when you do them. Before Richard died, he sent me something we were talking about bowing down and praying and so forth, and he said, "Do we need to revisit that?" And I shot off all the stuff that I knew on that, and he wrote back and he said, "Oh yeah, that's right," because it couldn't be, could it? And I said, "Not unless everything else is wrong." So,
the one place that says in Yeshaya, it talks about "and every knee shall bow." Okay,
yeah, we know they are.
If you take that out of context, if you take that out of context, as the New Testament does, and then you think, well, God wants everybody to bow down to Him, but that statement in the context that it's presented, God is speaking of judging the political and religious leaders of the earth. And he's saying that the political and
they
religious
will bow.
leaders, every one of them is going to bow down in judgment. And he says that while they're bowing down in judgment, the set apart, my children, are going to be standing around as witnesses. We're going to be witnesses standing around while, and so how can we be standing as witnesses if every knee is bowed? No, every knee is.
It even talks about them being drugged in chains in front of us and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Everyone that is going to be judged, their knees will be bowed. That ain't a group you want to be in.
Perfect context there. Makes total sense.
In context, it makes complete sense. It's one of the reasons why when somebody says, I want you to translate, this one statement, I can't do that because you can't translate anything unless you approach it in context.
Unless it's the first sentence of an entire book, then you can do just that.
Yeah. Well, even then, you need to know where it's leading. So, when it's even in the first sentence of the first book, and God created the spiritual realm and the material realm. Well, who is God? What is the difference in the two? Why did He create them? Why is He telling us this story? What's His
that's
purpose?
why the whole idea of breaking the Torah into verses is insane. What other book would you study one line at a time in?
None.
Yeah, I hand you a physics textbook. Are we going to sit there and discuss page 5, sentence 3? No, we're going to discuss this concept. We're going to discuss this chapter, this book.
Yeah, it's like the covenant. I think if you were to try to understand the covenant, apart from beginning it with an understanding of the relationship that Yahweh had with Adam and in Eden, and then what soured that relationship, and what the consequence was. And then came to understand the nature of the flood, the reasons for the flood, and why Noah and his family were spared, and what Noah and his family did to be spared, which was listen to Yahweh and follow His instructions. And then considered why Yahweh was so opposed to Babel, and what Babel represents as the contrarian view, and then to view Abraham leaving Ur of Sumeria, of Sumer, and leaving what became Babylon and Assyria, and coming to the Promised Land, and how Yahweh didn't even address him until he was 3/4 of the way out of that place, and then unless you review all 7 meetings between Abraham and Yahweh, you aren't going to understand the terms and conditions of the covenant. You need to consider first those 7 meetings in their entirety and what was said, but also those 7 meetings in the context of the greater whole, and then to see the covenant play out, not only in Yishak and Jacob, but with the children of Israel going into Mitzrayim, being enslaved, and then being liberated by Yahweh by way of the Moed Mikre. It's all one story, and it needs to be understood in the context of the whole. That's the difference between knowing and understanding is being able to make the connections, and you make connections in context.
Well, at this point, we're kind of on a mission too. I mean, we're really on a mission, and our mission is just to spread the truth. I mean, it's a pretty simple mission. I mean, it really is.
Pretty simple. Yeah.
But
I think there is no word to obey in Hebrew.
Right. I was going over that with the one last night.
We have as close as we can say in the English language. We have an obligation as part of Yahweh's family to accept and articulate Yahweh's position, His perspective, His testimony, and to be opposed to that which is contrary to it. It's when you live in a home and family, it would be wrong for you to oppose everything that family was built on and stands for. So as part of Yahweh's family, it is our responsibility to know Yahweh, to know what He said, to convey what he said, therefore share the truth, and at the same time to be opposed to and expose and condemn that which is a corruption of what he had to say. That's part of being in the covenant. Now, we don't care, literally do not care how people respond to it. There is no indication that Yahusha cared how people responded to what he had to say.
No, he defended his word and left it there for you to decide.
Right. As a matter of fact, every time after he would speak to people and prove that he could be trusted, he didn't hang around to see how they were going to respond.
He'd leave.
He left.
Yeah.
Well, you know, people really have to come to their own conclusions, don't they?
Correct.
I mean, they really do.
They do. Yeah. And
my job is not to convince you. My job is to be there to provide the information when you need it.
Deal with it.
I can't convince you.
Yeah, and even in that, it's not our job to provide the information that you need. It's our job to make the information available to you. To be signpost. To be signpost.
Yeah,
to be a sign.
To point you in the right direction.
To point you in the right direction and let you enjoy the process of learning and coming to understand on your own. And then to strongly encourage you, don't go out and talk about this until you really do understand, until it's part of your very nature. You know, once you understand it as part of your nature, then by all means, join in.
Yeah, freedom isn't a bad place to be. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it. You know, they say Jesus died for your sins, and let me tell you, I don't have that Jesus complex.
No, I don't either. No, because
that's
my
what
God,
we're really talking about
my
here.
God, who happens to be the only real God, can't die. So he most certainly didn't die for my
that's
sins.
a given. Yeah.
He didn't die for my sins.
You don't want a God that can die.
I don't want a God that can die. I don't want a God that man can kill. I don't want God on a stick. My God.
Well, you also don't want to make
that.
You don't want to be the guy trying to claim you're making a sacrifice, because that's how they get all these buffoons out to kill each other in wars too, isn't it?
Sure.
Everybody's out making a big sacrifice.
A God that wants me to kill for him, or a God that wants me to make a sacrifice for him?
Well, I could imagine. I could imagine a God that wants me to wipe some people off an area that he doesn't want in that area because it happens.
Yeah.
But that was his
I
home.
don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. At this
You'll
point,
do it again too.
At this point, those instructions are not to be understood literally. At the time they were given to be understood literally and symbolically. Today they are.
Well, no, and you point out, and it's really. This is a cogent point, and it was something I really hadn't thought of until you pointed it out, which is why were all these people wiped out? And you give all the reasons. Of course, I understood that much; they were bad for the area. But beyond that, you said something else. Never did Yahweh say go create war on anyone else outside the boundaries of Yisrael,
right.
and never did he promote war outside the land. Outside the home, he didn't care.
I don't want you to go conquest other people. I don't want you to rob other people. I don't want you to rob people in your home, and I don't want you to go and have raids against people outside of your home.
Well, that's a big deal. So that means that what that means for anybody that wants to take Yahweh's word seriously is that if you're part of a military regime, and you've been told that it's a good thing to go out there and kill the enemy off your own land and so forth, you've been lied to, or God's a liar. One or the other. I mean, you still have free will, and you can take your pick. Yeah,
if you're in the business of killing in the military, you are in opposition to God.
You're in the wrong business. That's exactly right. And of course, this is not a popular thing to say today. I mean, of course, they've made it popular.
Got to support the soldiers. Back the soldiers.
And I got to tell you, when somebody like Trump talks about that God's going to protect America, your military is going to protect you. I'm going to protect you, and God's going to protect you.
I don't think Trump knows Yahweh, but I actually like Trump. I think he's at least sincere. I do believe that. And I do believe that the media are the biggest bunch of scum
you got to realize that Trump's God is Trump.
That's correct.
So what he's saying is he's going to try and protect us.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll go
I
as far as to say
understand.
this, Larry, that I
He's
think
another
that,
hopeless leader. That's all.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all.
he is a hopeless leader. He's better. He was considerably better than the alternative. He was considerably better than the alternative. And I will give you one other thing. He's not only entertaining. There are some things that he says that are actually
true.
pretty legit. Yeah, like for example, he says, I'm not going to endorse the two-state solution.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not only that. What he said to what the guy even said to the press yesterday was absolutely true. Look, nobody. And I mean, I'm just break this down real quickly, and I'm not trying to be political here, but when people tell us how important the press is, well, the press is only important if they were honest.
That's
if they were publishing,
if they were actually
what Yahowah wanted.
Actually doing
but I want you to
research.
consider that the chairman of this uranium mining company, or after the uranium deal that the Obama administration made through the Clinton State Department, Joe Biden's son was given a big position in an oil company over there in Russia. The chairman of the mining company donated $1.5 million to the Clinton Foundation, and of course, that deal had to be approved by Obama and the Clinton State Department. And then what happened? What happened? Well, Caligula Clinton went over and started giving speeches at $500,000 a damn pop. Now, where was the press? This press, and I'm not even going to call them mainstream. I see them as sort of elite snobs, special bubble group. I really think that the world would be improved if they were shot. And I mean this. I think they're the lowest. They brought the country. You're not. I am. I don't care.
I know, but
they brought this country to a very, 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 very low level.
What's interesting with a republic does not work unless the people are informed. But unfortunately,
they keep them disinformed.
There is almost no one who is providing information that would be useful regarding America. Almost no one.
Now, who brought up the propaganda
the blogs don't do it. The media doesn't do it, and academia doesn't do it. And so what you have is people who are voting their opinions, and their opinions are baseless. You have people who are voting who are unaware that, for example, the American currency is a fiat currency, that America is bankrupt, that quantitative easing is nothing but a shell game, that America is more responsible for the conditions in Ukraine than is Russia, that Islam is a terrorist dogma and it is vicious towards women, that Muslims commit 99% of terrorist acts. Americans are ill-informed and they're not rational. And so you can't have a functional representative government when people are ill-informed and irrational. And it should be academia and the media's responsibility to do those things, but unfortunately both are in the indoctrination game.
Well, I kind of like the way they did that in the Planet of the Apes, where they had different bipeds taking different positions. The generals were gorillas, and these orangutans were, I don't know what they were, judges of some kind. It's kind of a bunch of guys sitting around with black robes on, calling each other Your Honor. Isn't my idea of reality.
No, the media. The media is not trustworthy. Academia is not trustworthy.
Academia might be worse than the media. They produce those bastards. They produce them.
They are the high church of the media is academia. They are.
Yeah, sure.
They are a derivative of academia. Yes.
And far be it from anybody to speak the common language in front of them, because at that point they're going to get I don't know, pedantic. They're very short-sighted. And they play to baser instincts. They use with a kaleidoscope of eclectic groups grounded in identity politics. I mean, it's become pathetic.
That bothers me the most is when the media speaks about two issues, which I'm an expert on. One is when they condemn the notion of moderation of the importation of Muslims into the country. And they speak of that as if that's barbarian
and uncivilized and unenlightened, when in fact, Islam is opposed to everything that the liberal believes. Everything the liberal holds dear, Islam is the antithesis of it.
Well, that big women's rights group was led by one, don't you?
Yes, so irrational that they're incapable of seeing their own hypocrisy in that, and nor making a connection between the Quran and terrorism, Muhammad and terrorism, the Hadith and terrorism, Islamic history and terrorism, or the fact that Muslims commit 99.9% of the terrorist acts in the world, and the fact they can never make that connection.
It's astounding. It's astounding.
It's astounding to me. And the second thing is when they talk about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and a two-state solution on behalf of the Palestinians, when there is no place called Palestine, there is no such thing as a Palestinian. They're nothing but Islamic Arabs, and they have been brainwashed by a religion that wants every Jew murdered.
Well, I got Jewish friends that repeat this day after day, right? They put out all kinds of buzz feeds on it and everything. I mean, day after day after day after day after day. And I tell them, if anybody isn't aware of this by now, they don't want to be aware of it.
They don't want to be aware
That's
of it.
all.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, when people, like I was reading, I read the sports page, from my iPad most every mornings, and one of the football teams that I used to follow before their quarterback became a political and religious nincompoop was the Seattle Seahawks, because I know the coach and I know the owner. And Bennett, who's one of the best defensive players on the team, decided he was not going to go to Israel based upon the NFL and Israel's invitation because of that it isn't fair to the Palestinians, and the Palestinians have a long, a 2,000-year history in that land, and it's their land, and they're not. And you just go, how in the world?
You are
one thing to be
ignorant,
stupid
ill-informed
to
person
believe
on the
the
planet,
lie,
aren't you?
but to promote the lie. I mean, just God, if you don't want to go, just shut up. If you don't want to go, shut up. Don't repeat a lie. There is no such thing as a Palestinian. There is no such thing as Palestine.
Do your research.
And there is no two-state solution.
Oh, I don't know. That's pretty hard research. It's pretty tough to get to.
It takes about 15
I mean, you got to go all the way back to, 1945 or something. I mean, it's just incredible. I don't know.
Open a book and read something. I'm pretty sure he's illiterate, and reading is a difficult thing for him.
Oh, I know. It's like Russell Wilson is opposed to Trump's ban on Muslims because God loves everyone.
Oh, sure, yeah. He's not discerning. He's got poor judgment skills and everything else. I know that.
Right.
Let's just ignore all those places where God says, I hate this person. We can just ignore those. He wasn't serious.
I wanted to talk about one thing
he is loving because he hates. And if he didn't hate, he couldn't be loving.
No.
That's why he calls himself a jealous God. He is jealous of those he loves and of the things that are important to him, and is hateful of those things which are counter to them. He is hateful of those things which are destructive to his people and to his family. That's everything we've read thus far. He says, I loved you. I wanted to raise you as my children, but you become dumbasses. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just because we were talking a few minutes ago about when Yahweh wanted to rid Israel of the vermin, as he thinks of it. And when he had King Shaul do that, one of the crimes that Shaul did was they couldn't take anything of value out of it. They were to do it. They would risk their lives. They'd go fight them, and then they were supposed to destroy them. He let the king off, of course. We were talking about that earlier today. But also the thing that was awful, additionally to that, was that they started taking they saved some of their wealth and their cattle and their sheep. He told them, don't do that. It was not about gain.
Right.
It was simply about making his home clean.
Right. Making it home
And,
safe.
yeah.
You aren't going to need money. You know,
So
he made it really clear. If you
do this,
respond
that's
favorably to my guidance, you're going to be the richest people on earth. You're going to be the envy of the earth with wealth if you simply acknowledge what I'm offering you through the covenant. And if you don't, then that's going to be a whole other story. And they chose the alternative, and so they would not make the right call. And there's nothing on earth that is as deadly as religious and political and military man. That's why the flood occurred. That's why God hates religion. Is that man is the most deadly creature.
That's why the spore happened.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, why Yahweh said to Adam, if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you're going to die. It's deadly. Man's use of his nasama for improper means is a deadly thing.
Frightening weapon.
Yeah. We are frightening in what we do. We're vicious in what we do, and with these people, God said, they're the degree that they are evil and wrong has reached a point where there's it's all consuming.
Their inequity is full.
Yeah. So you got to. The only option is to get rid of them. But as you say, it was only at that time to cleanse the house so that he could convey his message of life without endangering his family. And he knew also that if you allow these people to exist here, and they're vicious and they're religious and they're political, then you're going to
corrupt my people.
They're going to corrupt your people. You're going to emulate their ways.
It's going to affect my children, and I'm not going to let that infect my children.
No,
right.
You
More importantly, God said,
food,
being part of the covenant, you have to walk away from the ways of the Gentiles, from religion and politics. Well, how in the world can Israel be set apart from the ways of the Gentiles if, in fact, the worst of the Gentiles are living in Israel?
Yeah.
Well, that's true. I mean, I have to tell you, I do enjoy exposing political lies. I mean, I really do, and I really enjoy. I've really enjoyed lately how big an ass the press has made of themselves, so nobody has to second guess anymore.
Yeah, the thing that I really dislike too about the press, beyond the 2 points that I bring up, is that well, I'm clearly not a fan of Trump. I am just disgusted by how the media, particularly the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times, and CNN as well, are
the New York Times. Throw that in there too.
Consistent in their ruthlessness towards Trump, where everything they write is based upon their disgusting bias of political correctness and self-righteousness, and I just find it repulsive. And the connection between Amazon and the Washington Post, and Amazon's ad with the rabbi and the imam and their knee pads for bowing down to their fake gods. It's just that whole thing. It's just so irritating, and I'm so irritated by the fact that every day, if you want to read the news around the world, every major news outlet is condemning the man.
Oh, well, look, it's every news outlet. It's all the academics. It's the courts because they produce the lawyers. Yeah. It's the courts. It's the media. And by the way, it's the elite in both parties. I mean, you are aware that the upper echelon of the Republicans are working against him too.
But all the things that he's tried to do. With the Muslim ban, which is a right thing to do, with the changes in reducing the regulation in the country, right thing to do. But with all of the executive orders that he has put out, has there been a single Republican vote in Congress to pass legislation in support of those?
No.
Not one. He's
they
written
stand there all
executive
weak
order
kneed
to begin to dismantle Obamacare. Has there been a single vote?
No. No, you know the game they're playing. Well, we're arguing and debating amongst ourselves which is the best way to do this, and we're all weak-kneed after 8 years of laying here being lame. And you know, I'm just it's the whole right-left paradigm. It's pathetic because you actually have a businessman in there trying to get something done. Does he know Yahowah? No, he does not.
No, he doesn't.
But is the guy a legitimate businessman? Yes, he is.
Absolutely. And I would say that of every 10 things he says and does, 5 of them are pretty straightforward and decent, and 5 of them are back to the stupidity of most American politicians. But 50-50. That's better than anybody we've had in the White House. Maybe Jefferson. Maybe Jefferson.
Right. Well, and that is true. But we're covenant people, and we get that. Most people are not covenant. They're not going to get that. No. And it's really sad that this press, I mean, they are the most disgusting to me, that they see themselves as some kind of an arbiter of truth. And I sit there, I'm like, gag me. Are you kidding me? You're the people that overlooked theft, wars, lies for 50 years.
Yeah, like I look here, the news article just came out. This is the Washington Post, and Washington Post is
the Compost.
The news of Bezos and Amazon. It says Fannie Mae says. Now, how can Fannie Mae say? Fannie Mae is a government institution. Fannie Mae says.
Fannie Mae can't
Fannie Mae
talk.
is not a person. Fannie Mae is a
United
States government
I knew a girl named Fannie Mae, but that's
that is more responsible for the Great Recession than probably any other U.S. institution, because they sponsored the notion of variable rate loans, which is unbelievably stupid and counterproductive, and also the notion of somebody being able to buy a house with as little as 5% down, sometimes with nothing down. And so Fannie Mae is the U.S. organization that not only sponsored that but enabled it. But Fannie Mae is an institution. Fannie Mae cannot say. That means that an administrator with Fannie Mae, which are now being a government administrator, so somebody working for the U.S. government, part of the problem of one of the worst organizations, institutions in the U.S. government, is criticizing Trump's tax cut plan and says they could drive it into the red.
Well, wasn't it Barney's? Fannie Mae was ran by Barney Frank's boyfriend, wasn't it?
But by the way, home ownership, the interest on home ownership should not be deductible. It shouldn't be deductible.
In Australia, it's not. When you own it, you own it. There's no tax on it when you make a profit.
Right. Yeah. It should. If you have to borrow money, the interest should not be deductible. I mean, the fact is that we shouldn't even have an income tax. So there'd be none of this sort of thing. It should be.
Of course, if that was true, if there were no income tax, and you didn't have all this nonsense, we would have abundance, wouldn't we? I mean, really.
You should eliminate the size of government by 95%. Eliminate the U.S. military in entirety. It's counterproductive. Eliminate Social Security and make people be responsible for their own retirement. Eliminate Medicare and Medicaid. And collectively, rid the country of those things, and get the government out of the education business. And
my God, they'd call you a monster. They would call you a monster.
As well, you could eliminate the federal income tax in its entirety, and just on duties and fees, user fees, you could fund what is left. But in funding what is left, since you would not have an income tax, there would be no deductions like interest on home ownership. But this idea of interest on home ownership being deductible is societal engineering, because the government wanted people to buy into the American way, so that they were vested in the system, so they could be controlled. Like, for example, they're going to tax your property. It's your property, but they're going to tax it. It's your business or income, but they're going to tax it. You are subject to their control when you own a home, and you are essentially an indentured servant when you take out a mortgage.
Sure.
And so they wanted that was their means to control, and they encouraged it by saying that home ownership was deductible. And so
now, when you become,
if you're
when you become president, you're going to get rid of that 15% tax I pay on Social Security, right?
I've read what
Yahowah
said about human government in Shamuel, and so I can assure you that I do not want to be on his bad side. And so
Craig's interest in becoming president is about the same as his chances of becoming president. Zero.
My interest in becoming president is equal to my desire to become pope.
I realized a long time ago that Social Security and Medicare were there. They were a theft box. Any way you can take from them, take from them, take from them.
Put Bernie Madoff in prison for running a Ponzi scheme when the two largest aspects of the U.S. government, Medicare and Social Security, are both Ponzi schemes.
Right, but one of the other things I realized was, a big part of Medicare and Social Security was the idea to take any kind of wisdom or thought process that might be passed down from, say, grandmother to grandson and this kind of thing, and anything that would eliminate the traditional family. And I think that was a big part of it. I really do.
I think
it was very intentional.
The whole concept is to make people dependent upon the government. When Yahweh says,
not on their
be dependent
families.
on your government, be dependent upon me. Don't rely on your government, rely on me. And Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security are man's alternative to God. But they are. Now, people have said, I think Rich was one of the people who used to bring it up regularly, is it wrong to take Social Security? No, you paid into the system. So it is, if you're qualified to get paid, great. My view is that the system should go away. I have no influence in the U.S. government. I don't vote. I don't pay any attention. I can't fix it. I don't have any desire to fix it. Too many things to fix. It's a ship that is sinking. And it's
we know that. We know this 100%. We know this.
Right.
Yeah, right. But most people don't. And the only reason I watch any of it now is just to point out the lies, and because there's nothing wrong with it.
That's why I read the news. Is I want to know what the lies are, and it's absolutely flabbergasting to me as to how ignorant and irrational the media has become. How much the academia has gotten into indoctrination as opposed to education, and how
it's astounding to me.
It's
astounding. They have pieces every night on what's going on at this college and what's going on at that college and what's going on at this school, and I sit there, I just shake my head. They got this guy Waters that goes out and he talks to these people. They know nothing. They can't even name. You could ask them was George Washington a president? And they go,
oh no.
They don't even know. I had one guy. Right. I saw one guy say that he said, "Well, who freed the slaves?" And he said, "Who discovered America?" He said, "Well, wasn't it Abraham Lincoln?" Abraham Lincoln discovered America. I'm just sitting there listening to this shit, and I'm just going, where do they get these people? Right? Don't you guys feel the same way?
You know who actually discovered the land that we call America?
Yeah, and his name wasn't even America. It was like, it was some Italian guy or something.
No, that's the guy whose name allegedly
some Mongolian who came across centuries ago.
It was Mongols and Russians and Chinese. That people from Mongolia, Russia, and China. You look at the DNA of the native peoples.
Alaska.
Yeah, all the way from the Incas, the Mayas,
You're going with
Aztecs,
DNA.
the Sioux, the Iroquois,
that's right.
Seminoles. You look at all of the tribes and civilizations in the Americas. They all have common DNA. With the DNA from China, Russia, and Mongolia, and so they are the ones who discovered this continent. They did so during a period of global cooling, when you could walk from Russia
to
Alaska and down. So that's
well, you had
that's
Eric the Red too, right? I mean, you had Eric the Red that also
much later.
The Leif Erikson, the Viking. Yeah, but put that in perspective. Now we're dealing with 1200, 1300 CE versus probably in the range of
2000
thousands of years, many thousands of years BCE.
Oh, listen, only you would do that to me, but I thought you were talking about the guy they call Americus, whose name wasn't even Americus.
Oh, no, Americus.
It didn't even sound
he's
like
the guy that was a map maker. And,
well, his name wasn't even Americus.
No.
I've seen his real name. It's not even close to
an Italian name.
Yeah, but America was actually named by, I'm talking about by the Europeans now, was actually named after a feathered flying serpent.
Yeah, no, that's the sun god of the native peoples that lived where the Spanish conquistadors found the most gold, which would be around the Aztecs and the Mayans. They had a sun god called Amer, and Ka was land of. So it's the land of Amer, and Amer was depicted as an eagle, and was a sun god, and so it's the land of the eagle and sun god. You'll see that depiction in the Freemasonry temple, the temple of the Freemasons in Washington D.C. in their throne room. You'll see Amer presented there as God, and so that really is the best explanation of how we got this name. Amer.
No, I understand.
The land of Amer.
Yeah. But I understood it to be a tethered serpent. That's what it looked like to me. But I've read a few different things on that. But I do know that there was nobody named America that discovered America from Europe.
No, he was an Italian map maker, and there's the legend that his name was used. But the problem with that is he was never here. And so to name it after a lowly map maker is just, I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah, and I think Columbus didn't Columbus show up down in the Bahamas somewhere, didn't he? San
Salvador is an island in the southern Bahamas. And so all he did is went to the Caribbean and the Bahamas islands, and so he never made it to North or South or Central America. And those who followed him, they went into where there were civilizations and gold. So they went in and attacked the Mayan and particularly the Aztecs and the Incas, and so that was the land of Amer.
Right. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, they were Incan god, Aztec god. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And it was that was America.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Now I will tell you that on a 1 to 10 scale of being a reason to be critical of the United States of America, that's a 0.1. Yeah, it's a 0.1 on a 1 to 10 scale.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
The fact that the U.S. has the largest military in the world, larger than all the rest of the world's militaries combined, and that it uses it to impose its will in a counterproductive fashion.
According to Yahowah, that's true.
Yeah, the fact that it has a fiat currency and is bankrupt. Yeah, there are lots of reasons that it legislates against.
No, but that's words mean things.
Yeah, they do.
And Yahowah points this out all the time.
It wasn't important at all. I agree with you. Words mean things. Yep.
Well, I got to get going, guys, so I'll talk to you next week.
Okay.
Yeah, Larry, I'm glad you could join us.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I
avoided
myself here tonight. I just had to jump in there. I just had to have a little fun tonight, that's all.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
America, land of the serpent gods is what it says, and then one says the sun gods. So either way you look at it, I'm looking at it now.
The sun and the serpent are one and the same.
Yeah.
Satan is under the guise of the sun and under the guise of the serpent, so they're one and the same.
Winged sun. That's what it says. Winged sun.
Yeah,
the
winged sun.
Egyptian winged sun.
And they typically, when the winged sun was most often depicted, like the Romans did, is the eagle. The symbol of the United States, the symbol of the President of the United States is the eagle. That was the representation.
Knowing what we know, and you see some guy signing an order in front of a Congressional Medal of Honor, the Air Force version of it there with the sun drip, halo and all that, and you sit and you look at that, and you think you're in Babylon.
Oh yeah.
You don't think,
it was so funny that Flynn, who is one of the few people who would actually call a spade with Islam. He actually knew that Islam was satanic and evil, and he resigns because he did something that's illegal and then lied about it. And then Trump tries to appoint another military man to that position. And what it just strikes me is that we are so, as a nation, so enamored with uniform and rank that we're unaware, as a nation, that the U.S. War College did a 10-year study of what the single most common denominator was among the enlisted and the officers in the U.S. military. And what they came to the conclusion is the single most important common denominator is a propensity to lie.
Yeah, it's a culture.
That universally, given the option to tell the truth or to lie, they preferred to lie. And so why should we be surprised that Flynn lied? And why aren't we aghast that the next person chosen for the job is also an admiral, a general, a
well, he didn't take
officer.
the job. He didn't take the job.
He turned the job down. I know. He turned the job down. But
why do they
that's the nature of the military officers.
Well, I've done some listening to Pachenik, and he said prior to all this that they had initiated a soft military coup, and that's the only way they put him in. They planned on, coronating the Clintons. They did, and there were what you have, and it appears to me to be true. Is you have civilian intel, and they're the worst of the worst. That's your Bushes, your Obamas, your Clintons. Okay, they're ineffectual. They're people that have never had jobs. Really stop and think about a person who's never had a job, becomes a governor or a senator, and then becomes a president. That's been the story on the last three of these sons of bitches. Am I wrong?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Community organized. That's like saying rabble rouser. I'm an agitator. That's not even a job. Okay, no. So then on the military side, they at least had to work their way up, so they're more effectual, they're smarter. They really are than these civilian. Yeah. Look at Brennan, John Brennan. Are you kidding me? This low-level boob. By the way, he converted. You know that, right? The former head of the CIA. And so, that's what you had. You had military intel going up against civilian intel, and the civilian intel, they were so stupid and so ineffectual that they lost.
But I think the military intel is equally bad.
Well, they might be equally as bad, but they're a lot more efficient, my friend.
I wouldn't even go that far. Military intelligence is an oxymoron.
That's the joke. But
I studied because I was interested in the deaths of the first 500 Americans in Iraq and Afghanistan. And 100% of the time, the U.S. military lied.
Well, sure.
So the military intel I have zero respect for. Now,
but the intel that you're getting that from is civilian intel.
The CIA
is all
the
civilian.
NSA is wrong most of the time.
Yeah, they're all civilian. They're all civilian.
They're wrong most of the time. Actually, the NSA is military. The NSA is military. And the CIA operates under the cover of the U.S. State Department, which
that's Catholics in action.
Oh God, it's just all rotten to the core.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you, but that was the fight. I'm telling you, that was the fight.
Yeah.
And that's why Hillary Clinton isn't here destroying small businesses today. And
yeah,
at least
so
coal miners are going back to work.
We have wrong versus wrong. Wrong in battle versus back to the lesser of two evils.
Well, you know what? In all seriousness, I've considered, you take a guy that has at least built a business, a thriving business, against people who have never had jobs. Now, Craig, you're a businessman. You were a very successful businessman. One of the brightest men I've ever heard. Really, you are. Now, you're going to tell me that some moron, complete, ineffectual moron, who's never even held a job, can somehow have the responsibility of running the biggest economy in the world? I just don't think, it's not even feasible.
Yeah, in all fairness, Hillary Clinton actually did have a job for a period of time. She was a lawyer. I don't think
they got fed by her husband, the governor.
I know. But she wasn't a very good lawyer. But she was briefly employed as a lawyer. After that, she really had no job. Being a politician is not a job. But my point was that with Trump and why he prevailed over the 17 Republican candidates and ultimately over the Hillary Democratic machine is that a average businessman, and Trump's not a great businessman. I mean, if Trump took the money he inherited and put it in the stock market,
turned some millions into billions.
He'd be worth more than he is today. So Trump's not a great businessman, but an average businessman is 100 times more effective than the best politician. That's just the reason he won.
That's right. That's just the truth of it.
You know, the best in America don't go into politics. The best in America,
but
don't go into the military.
No, of course not.
The best in America go into business.
But they're crying. They're crying about a phone call to Russia, and didn't say anything about uranium deals and 1.5 million being moved in here and there. I mean, I can even picture Bernie Sanders, back in the 70s, meeting up there in Vermont with the
Flynn
Russians.
Flynn was not deposed. Yeah, Flynn was not
turning over, the microfiche.
But keep in mind, Flynn was not asked to resign because he called the Russian ambassador. He was not even asked to resign for discussing sanctions, because he can discuss sanctions, he just can't impose
I understand
a policy. So
I get it.
He was asked to resign because he lied about the conversation.
Yeah, to Pence. I understand.
Right. Yeah. So he had to, you can't be in a prominent position of national security advisor and before you even take the job to lie to those on your team about an issue like this. Because you're no longer credible. And so he had to resign because he was not credible. And that's just all there is to it. Nothing more to it than that. So I would prefer that Flynn remain, because he is, in that position, he is one of the few Americans that actually understands Islam. I would much prefer for him to be the last person out the door rather than the first person out the door. I understand why he's not there. You can't lie. Credibility is everything at this point in the administration, and so he lost his credibility. Bummer.
No, I understand that. I'm not talking about from the perspective of reality. I'm talking about the perspective of the press.
No, of course. The press was stupid.
When did the press go from loving, to, like I say, Bernie Sanders would be the guy you'd picture turning over the microfiche in the dark park up in Vermont?
Or just be honest about the whole thing. A private citizen can talk to Russia and Russian officials all day long about sanctions and not be in violation of the law. They're only in violation of the law if they say that they're in a position as a private citizen to negotiate policy with that country. They're not, and he didn't.
I understand.
So he didn't violate the law, and there was nothing
You mean
wrong
the
with
Logan Act, the one from 1799?
Right, and he didn't.
Where did they find that? Wikipedia? I mean, really?
And this idea that we should treat Russia as the enemy is a myth of NATO. It's a myth of NATO.
Yeah, I hear you.
Or
I'm
that
just
we're trying to hold Russia
fun
accountable for Crimea and the Ukraine, is a myth of propaganda to create the impression of America needs a military to protect us from the boogeyman, and it needs NATO to protect us from the boogeyman. We are the boogeyman. And the military and NATO
that sounds like John
too.
McCain to me. I mean,
right.
there's a guy that never meant a war he didn't like.
He didn't
like.
like.
What's wrong with that guy? What's wrong with
that
guy?
He went from quasi-sensible to absolutely off the wagon, and maybe the most delusional man in Washington.
I think he hides behind the fact that he spent some years in, the Hanoi Hilton, and then that was the end of him. But, I mean, I have a feeling about John there. You remember the Keating Five, of course. And I have a feeling that once John was caught in that room with those other guys and he was the only one that wasn't prosecuted, he wasn't prosecuted for a reason. They were going to use him.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah,
he ran to lose when he ran against Obama the first time. Yeah, I do. I think they made him at the... Yeah. The Keating Five.
He was done the moment he picked Sarah Palin to be his running mate. I mean, it's just done. I can see Russia from.
I don't even know where they got. She's sort of like the all-American cheerleader or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right. But vice president material, no.
Well, apparently you don't have to be much to be a vice president. I mean, Albert Gore proved that. And how about the only thing John Kerry proves is that anybody could be the head of the State